Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Tuesday, August the 15th, 2023. We're coming up to a new moon. Yeah, tomorrow, Wednesday, the sun and the moon come together and a new lunar cycle begins. I have made a video about this new moon, and I have pinned a comment where I give a link to my YouTube video if you can't find it elsewhere. But anyway, it's now time to look at what's going on today on Tuesday, August the 15th, 2023. So let's look at the astrology for what's going on right now. And as usual, I've set the chart for noon, August the 15th, New York time. So we can see that the moon is still in Leo. And indeed, the moon is moving to a conjunction of Venus. And then tomorrow we see that it makes the conjunction of the sun, and sun conjunct moon by definition is a new moon. So we can say that the moon is waning. You know, in astrology, the waning moon is traditionally considered to be unfortunate. So it's not a good idea to start new projects when the moon is waning. So if you've got something planned, don't start it today. Maybe start it tomorrow. But even then, I would consider the possibility that maybe you should postpone it even further. But yeah, in general, the waning moon is unfortunate. Waxing moon is fortunate, and I think this is particularly the case in Vedic astrology. So the moon conjunct Venus, which we have today, it's good for relationships. You know, the moon and the Venus are two planets which are connected with relationships. They connect with the way we relate to the world around us. It can be a great time for developing new relationships. And in terms of existing relationships, you know, if there have been recent problems, now would be a great time to patch things up. Yet we must be aware that there's a lot of Leo in the sky at the moment. You know, with the moon in Leo, Venus in Leo, sun in Leo. You know, people are proud. We have to treat people properly. So if we want to get people on our side, flattery can really be very useful. Now, when you look at Venus in this chart, you can see that it's got the sun and the moon on either side of it. So Venus is kind of on the sun-moon midpoint, and that sort of gives a feel of what today is like. Now, it's true that a Sun-Venus conjunction isn't particularly fortunate. But you know, that Sun-Venus conjunction, which I talked about a few days ago, is beginning to separate, and now we can start to see Venus as being on the Sun-Venus midpoint, and that's very harmonious. It allows us to relate to the world around us. You know, the sun is the masculine principle, moon is a feminine principle, and Venus is between them, and so we can balance everything out. So in that sense, it looks like being a very good day. But there is a rather complicated thing going on between four planets: Sun, Venus, Mercury, Mars. In astrology, you know, there is an aspect which is called the semi-sextile. So a sextile is 60 degrees, so a semi-sextile is 30 degrees. And today there are two semi-sextiles, and that's probably somewhat unusual. So let me show you those two semi-sextiles. There is the sun in Leo at 22 degrees of the sign. And there you've got Mars at 22 degrees Virgo. So we can say that the Sun and Mars are in semi-sextile. And likewise, Venus is at 19 Leo and Mercury is at 19 Virgo. So there's a semi-sextile between Mercury and Venus. So that kind of means that these four planets are like intimately connected with each other. In fact, we can say that the Venus-Mars midpoint, which is about here, is conjunct the Sun-Mercury midpoint. And, I think that is an important lineup. So the Venus-Mars midpoint is about relating. It's also about sexuality because, Venus, planet of female sexuality, Mars, planet of male sexuality. So there's the Venus-Mars midpoint. And then you've got the Sun-Mercury midpoint, which is about communicating who we are. So with those two midpoints coming together and these two semi-sextile aspects really linking into each other, then this is a day when we can really express who we are and express how we want to relate to the world, and if appropriate, we can express our sexuality, perhaps in a very sort of clear way. I mean, not, I think, in a bad way. We can just, being clear about who we are, what our preferences are, and so on. So I think that is good, but matters are complicated by Saturn. So you can see that Saturn is sort of opposition this lineup. So there's the Mercury-Venus conjunction, there's the Sun-Venus conjunction, and then Saturn is opposition those two. So we can say that Saturn is on the Sun-Mercury midpoint, Saturn is on the Venus-Mars midpoint. So while it is important to express who we are, to express how we want to relate to the world, Saturn does suggest perhaps a certain amount of difficulty. We may feel oppressed. We may feel that we can't express who we are. We may be worried about how the world is going to respond to us. We may be worried about how particular people are going to respond to us. Are they going to be able to deal with us? Are they going to be as enthusiastic as we'd hope? Maybe not. And so maybe Saturn is talking about fear. And I suppose the challenge today is, for many of us, is to overcome those fears and be able to express ourselves and perhaps our sexuality as well in a free-flowing way without being too self-conscious. Now, while that is going on, we have got a 90-degree aspect between the Moon and Jupiter. Jupiter is a fortunate planet, the greater benefic, but when the Moon squares Jupiter, it can suggest indulgence, overindulgence. That might mean emotional overindulgence. It could be financial overindulgence. We might, for example, not know when to stop spending money, or we might spend our money on things that we don't need, or we might be inappropriately generous. So we have to be a bit careful with that Moon-Jupiter square. And, in terms of our feelings and how we express our feelings, we have to keep control over it. That doesn't mean suppress our feelings. And I think this kind of links into what I was saying about Saturn opposition the Venus-Mars and Sun-Mercury midpoints. We don't want to allow Saturn to oppress us, but perhaps we should see Saturn in a more positive sense about perhaps channeling it and creating the right sets of boundaries. Now, yesterday I think I talked about the fact that Pluto was semi-square the Mars-Saturn midpoint. And today, it's still semi-square the Mars-Saturn midpoint, and it's like stronger than it used to be. And in fact, it's at noon New York time, Pluto is exactly on the Mars-Saturn midpoint. And this can be, this could be quite frustrating. We might feel that we have to take dramatic initiatives to to free ourselves of frustration. Also, Mars Saturn is the death pair, and it's connected with things coming to an end, and so that death may not be a sort of literal death. Pluto is often a planet associated with death as well. But death can take many forms, and death can actually be about transformation. And so we might realize today, with Pluto semi-square the Mars-Saturn midpoint, that really something that is doing us no good has actually come to an end, and we need to move on. Now, as far as my forecasts for the 12 signs are concerned, I've done them, and here they are. So these are my forecasts for today, which is Tuesday, August the 15th, 2023. Aries, you feel somewhat conflicted. On one hand, you know there's work to be done that is perhaps pretty boring. On the other hand, you want to get noticed, and your ego might feel a bit bruised if you think you're being ignored. You somehow have to resolve the contradiction, which means being respected and appreciated for doing your duty. Taurus, you hear or read something that bothers you. It seems to undermine your long-standing view of the world. But don't panic. You're learning something important, and if you put this new knowledge into practice, then something which seems to be disturbing can actually be an opportunity. And with Venus nestled between the Sun and the Moon, you can find harmony and even love. Gemini, watch out. Some people are fragile. It doesn't take much to upset them, and your careless words could cause a lot of trouble. So think carefully about what you say and avoid making criticisms. But if you behave with consideration and respect, it's a different story. You can make someone's day. Cancer, the Moon makes a conjunction to Venus and a square to Jupiter. In one sense, this is good news. You'll be generous and enthusiastic, and you can meet someone new and interesting. Yet, there's a danger of overindulgence, not knowing your limits and frittering away your emotional and financial capital. Leo, you want to do the fun stuff, but it is becoming increasingly clear that there are important details which need to be attended to. For example, sorting out your tax, cleaning up your home, or perhaps visiting the dentist for an overdue checkup. If you really want to have fun, you first have to do what is necessary. Virgo, you want things to be above board and uncomplicated, and you assume that everyone sees things the same way as you. Unfortunately, some of the people around you take themselves too seriously, and they think that they are more important than they actually are. You have to humour them rather than get annoyed. Libra, Venus, your ruling planet, is actually in quite a nice position. It is between the Sun and the Moon, meaning that you feel a sense of inner harmony. and this allows relationships to answer many of your needs. And the only thing that could spoil the day's vibes is someone being overly analytical. So don't let that person be you. Scorpio, if you're working, you must make an effort to listen to what other people are saying, even if you disagree with them. Because with Mercury being exactly 30 degrees from Mars, some constructive criticism might be coming your way. You know you're right, but that doesn't mean that you can't make small adjustments to your overall approach. Sagittarius, you want to move forward, but you feel that circumstances are holding you back. It's tempting to blame outside forces, but there may be something else that's stopping you, perhaps a set of attitudes that is no longer useful. And a sudden inspiration challenges you to break the deadlock. Capricorn, your contacts with other people could develop a new intensity, and this may not be a bad thing, provided you listen to your feelings. Indeed, with the moon making a conjunction to Venus, there could be a merging of souls. Yet excessive behaviour by you or anyone else can't be tolerated. Aquarius, there continues to be an emphasis on relationships. After all, the Sun, Moon and Venus are in Leo, your opposite sign. It could be that short-term events are out of your control, with other people pulling the strings. Or maybe it's a time when you just have to let partners and loved ones have their say. But single Aquarians seem to have opportunities. Pisces, don't underestimate the need for preparation. You might like to be spontaneous, but that's not going to work out. You just won't be able to see it through. And avoid unnecessary travelling. You might feel that it is necessary, but I think it's just a distraction. Distractions can also come in a human form. Busy people causing needless chaos. So I'm now going to finish with the I Ching, and I threw 3 coins in the air, asking the question, what is Tuesday going to be like for visitors to my YouTube channel? So the first hexagram I threw was hexagram 47, which is exhaustion or oppression. You can kind of see this in the hexagram. You know, the bottom three lines represent the abyss. The top 3 lines represent a lake. So the symbolism there is of a lake with a hole in it. All the water is flooding out. You know, we're going to feel a bit exhausted and oppressed, rather like a lake that's losing its water, losing its energy. So we have to, work out how actually do we deal with this oppression? What do we do? Well, it seems in the first instance, we mustn't feel too sorry for ourselves, because yes, we might feel a bit hemmed in, but the external situation isn't too bad, and it may actually be a lot to do with our perceptions about ourselves rather than reality. And I think we can be helped by other people. Someone seems to be available who's going to offer something which could make us feel better. Another point about this oppression is that the I Ching talks about vine leaves, being bound by vine leaves. That's kind of a bit like in the tarot with the devil, how in the devil, the tarot, you've got those man and a woman tied with with chains, but you can see those chains are very loose. It's as if they could escape if they wanted to. And it's the same with the vine leaves. You know, we're tied with vine leaves. You know, it's not, these aren't tight metal chains. We could escape the oppression if we wanted to, and maybe we just feel happier, you know, feeling sorry for ourselves, feeling that we can't really get anything done, and it kind of removes responsibility from us. Now, that doesn't mean that things are suddenly going to get better. And if we look at the next hexagram, we come to hexagram number 12, which is standstill. You know, Wilhelm's I Ching has the word stagnation in parenthesis after standstill. So, yeah, I think we're going to find it really difficult to get anything done, even if we've worked out that we're responsible for our own feelings of oppression, even when we recognize that there's nothing really holding us back in the external world. Even then, it's going to be really difficult to get things done, and we're just going to feel that just nothing is happening. I'm not really sure if there's much we can do about this, but you know, it's not a disaster. I just think we just need to accept the situation. I think it may be from an astrological point of view. You know, the new moon is tomorrow, but right now, you know, the moon is still waning. We're still in an old cycle. And so we can't really expect much to happen. So the best I can say is perhaps we can just wait until tomorrow and things will get better. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say for today. And I will talk to you tomorrow.